gotta say this, it's like a really fun way to waste 3 hours. Hey movie watchers, welcome to today's review of Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. If you're new to this channel, I give you my synopsis, my likes, my dislikes. Then we go into the breakdown where I give individual scores of the writing, the acting, the cinematography, and the directing. All my reviews do have some spoilers in them, so consider this to be fair warning. Okay movie watchers, let's review. So the movie basically starts out with Rick Dalton learning that he is kind of an over-the-hill actor. He's over the hill in his career, and he's on the way down. Whereas Cliff Booth, his stunt double, is a little more carefree, and it doesn't seem to really bother him or get to him as much. They kind of have their own dynamic together, and they go through the ups and downs together as friends. There is a side plot with Sharon Tate, who is neighbors with Rick. Contrary to how it happened in real life, she survives the Manson cult killings because Rick and Cliff kill them in like a spectacularly gruesome fashion. And the movie concludes with Sharon inviting Rick up to the house to meet everyone and her friends, and it possibly leaves room for us as the movie watcher to believe that his career might actually be saved. Movie watcher question. The movie is getting mixed reviews, and Once Upon a Time in Hollywood doesn't really have a force that is actually driving the plot forward. It's a slow-paced, dialogue-rich collection of really cool scenes, but still it's a story that barely has any real direction. Some hate this about the movie, some really love this about the movie, but I want to know where you stand. Let me know in the comment section down below. Starting with my likes, like number one of my favorite things about the movie is that it doesn't follow the traditional first, second, and third act way of writing, and the first and second acts don't really have a clear dividing line. Typically the first act, known as the setup, and the second act, known as the conflict, have a much more divisive relationship. In most movies you can find a single point in the plot where the setup ends and the conflict begins. But in this movie, you actually have two first acts that transition into the second act at completely different times. You have one part of the first act where Rick Dalton and Cliff Booth are kind of realizing that their career is fading and possibly coming to an end. But we have a second part of the first act with the Manson cult and the hippies, and it's still being set up while the first part of the act is already transitioning into the second act. And they both merge and come together to become the start of the third act. But the beauty of it is that you don't actually realize this until you've reached the third act. Maybe not even until the movie's actually over. Now the problem with this is it does slow the pace of the movie down quite a bit. However, in my opinion, I do believe this is some top-notch storytelling. Like number two, the acting in my opinion is honestly some of the best acting that I have seen in a really, really long time. DiCaprio is absolutely incredible. He is amazing in the movie. Brad Pitt is probably the most laid back and simple and cool character of the whole movie, and somehow he actually pulls off being your favorite actor by the end of the movie. There are tons of cameos in the movie, my favorite cameo being Timothy Olyphant. Quentin kind of does a shout out to his career as a cowboy, and that whole scene with him and DiCaprio shooting the Western movie in that saloon was probably one of my favorite scenes in the whole movie. It's also probably one of the best acted scenes in the whole movie as well. DiCaprio is an actor who's playing a character, who's an actor playing a character, and Timothy is quite literally doing the exact same thing right next to him. Except Timothy's character's character doesn't actually break stride and doesn't miss a single beat, even while Rick Dalton is actually fumbling over and missing his lines. And I'm pretty sure that the whole scene is actually a single scene, which means Leonardo DiCaprio and Timothy Olyphant did this whole thing in like one shot. There's no telling how many times it took them to make this in one shot, but they did it. And in my opinion, this scene is like pure acting gold. Like number three, I really appreciated all of the little bitty things that were tied together in this movie. I can't cover all of them because there's too many of them, but to sum them up, Quentin takes multiple opportunities to reference a lot of his other movies that he did previously. I find that always to be fun to look for connections in the movie. Another one being when Sharon's character goes to the movies to watch her own movie that she acted in, they're actually showing the original movie with the real life Sharon Tate on the big screen. I actually think that's kind of cool. You also have the tie-in of Zoe Bell as, I think, stunt coordinator in this movie. Quentin has worked with her a lot over many of his movies, and you might remember her from Death Proof. But she's also a stunt double in most, if not all, of Quentin's movies. So it's nice to see her again here. Then you have the whole real-life tie-in of the Tate murders, the Manson family, and Quentin actually kind of changes the story, which I actually kind of like the new version. Cliff Booth and his dog Randy really kick some hippie ass at the end of the movie. Rick Dalton even kills one with a flamethrower he used from a previous movie, and it's all just beautiful storytelling. And in a time where comic book movies rule the box office, and movies are largely based on social politics and identity politics, and in a time when Hollywood cares more about virtue signaling than actual real story writing, it's really nice to see something with good writing and good storytelling. Moving on to my dislikes, dislike number one, there are times when you do notice that nothing is actually really happening in the movie, and it does get kind of boring. And I think once or twice it actually pulled me out of the movie. Most of the acting and writing is done well enough that most of it's not noticeable, but there are several times that it is noticeable, and I may or may not have responded to a few text messages at those times. Dislike number two, I really did not like the transition into the third act. You basically have Kurt Russell narrating that Rick and Cliff go to Italy to make some movies. This part was really boring to me. I also found it really unnecessary. The plot doesn't really have a driving force to begin with, so this even feels more out of place. And I can't think of any reason why it needs to be in the movie to begin with. And I also can't think of any reason why it needs to be narrated either. And I was really taken out of the movie at this particular part, so I wasn't a big fan. Okay, movie watchers, here's the breakdown. I'm giving the writing a 7.5 out of 10. It's written very well, especially the dialogue, but the plot doesn't have a driving force, and that can really hurt any story. I am giving the acting a 10 out of 10. The main cast does phenomenal, the cameos do great, the secondary cast does great. I really have absolutely no complaints with the acting at all in this movie. The cinematography gets a 10 out of 10. I quite literally believe that they performed to the peak of their ability when filming this movie. Nothing to complain about here. I am giving the directing a 7 out of 10. Now, Quentin is one of my favorite directors. I think most people would probably say the same thing. I absolutely love how he tells part of the story through filming scenes and actual movie or commercials. But there are parts where you can really tell that the movie is just dragging on. And then I think the whole part where going to Italy and having Kurt Russell narrate it, I didn't like it, and I think it should have just been cut from the final product entirely. Overall, Once Upon a Time from Hollywood's getting an 8.5 out of 10 from me. It's definitely worth watching. I feel like it's just a really fun, cool way to waste 3 hours. Thank you for watching. I've got more reviews and discussions coming your way, so check back soon for those, and I'll see you on the next one.